Have you ever considered the power of a mental framework? How the underlying assumptions we hold silently dictate the boundaries of our achievements. It's a concept well documented in organizational psychology. A company's culture shapes its destiny. But what about your personal culture? The internal operating system that runs your life. Perhaps this is the moment you audit that system. This content didn't just appear by chance. It was selected for you when your own questions about your current trajectory became loud enough to seek answers. Here's a principle most people fail to grasp. These moments of insight are not gifts from an external force. They are not strokes of luck or algorithmic quirks. They are echoes. And if you are engaging with this, if some impulse guided you to this specific point in time, it's likely a significant one, because the framework I am about to outline is not merely a set of ideas. It is a fundamental recalibration of how you can architect your experience. You see, the majority of people navigate their lives as if they are following a pre-written script. They execute their daily routines, respond to external stimuli, and conclude each day with a sense of having endured its challenges. They are waiting for a promotion, waiting for the economy to improve, waiting for an external green light to pursue a greater vision. But here's the flaw in that logic. You are not an actor reading lines. You never were. Every day, you execute thousands of cognitive choices that construct your perceived reality. What you choose to focus on, the meaning you assign to events, the narratives you reinforce about your identity and potential. Most individuals allow these choices to run on autopilot, guided by past conditioning, and then feel bewildered when their life seems reactive and out of their control. But what if I proposed that your entire understanding of personal development is inverted? What if resistance is not a required element of growth? What if feeling stagnant is not your default condition? What if a state exists where you can operate in such a way that favorable conditions seem to gravitate toward you? Where the ideal collaborators and circumstances emerge without relentless pursuit. This is not about esoteric laws of attraction or feigning positivity while ignoring genuine issues. This is about comprehending a core mechanism of human consciousness. Your reality is far more malleable than you currently perceive. The obstacles you face, the limitations you consent to, the elaborate justifications for why your goals are unattainable, they are largely constructs you have agreed to uphold. Consider this. As a child, before you were conditioned to understand risk and probability, your belief was your reality. This wasn't a product of immaturity. but an innate ability to perceive without the filter of learned limitations. You could look at a set of building blocks and see a metropolis. You could imagine a future self and viscerally feel its potential. Over time, you were taught to label this creativity and store it with other relics of youth. But what if that was not creativity? What if it was your uncorrupted access to a fundamental truth? Your inherent power to look beyond current data and perceive emergent possibilities. What if the primary difference between that state and your current one is a meticulously trained focus on constraints over opportunities? I'll interrupt for a moment to say what's customary in these situations. If these ideas resonate with you and you wish for this dialogue to continue and evolve, the most effective way to support it is by subscribing. It's more than a number. It's a signal to the algorithms that something of value is happening here. Now, this is where the application becomes crucial. Every individual who has ever engineered a significant breakthrough, who has reached a new echelon of performance, who has made the improbable seem inevitable, they all have one functional trait in common. They withdrew their consent from the version of reality that insisted their goal was impossible. They did not receive some classified information or a genetic advantage. They simply ceased to accept the current state of affairs as a permanent condition. And that withdrawal of consent, that subtle cognitive shift from "this is the unchangeable reality" to "this is the current data set," is the fulcrum upon which everything turns. The instant you stop treating your present circumstances as a final verdict, you create the cognitive space for a new outcome to materialize. You transition from being a subject of your history to an architect of your future. Now, I can anticipate the counter-argument. This sounds plausible in a vacuum, but what about systemic issues? What about financial crises? What about your personal history? What about the objective reasons for difficulty? And my response is this: I am not suggesting these factors are illusory. I am suggesting they do not have to be determinants of your potential. Most people address their problems like a programmer trying to fix a software bug by shouting at the computer. They apply more force, more willpower, and more stress, trying to brute force a solution. When this fails, they conclude the problem is too complex, or they lack the skill to solve it. But what if the bug isn't in the code, but in the operating system itself? What if it's a foundational assumption? The moment you stop trying to patch the symptom and start questioning the underlying premise, the entire system can recalibrate. This is the true nature of progress. The most significant advances do not come from greater effort. They come from a higher quality perspective. The candidate who lands the position isn't always the one with the most experience. It's the one who embodies the solution. The startup that disrupts an industry doesn't do so with the largest budget. It does so by identifying a problem from an angle no one else had considered. And all these outcomes begin with the same initial step. An individual decides that the consensus view of a situation is not the only one. Someone elects to operate from a place of strategic possibility rather than inherited limitations. But there is a critical condition. You cannot install this new operating system while the old one is still running. You cannot build a new structure on a foundation you refuse to examine. And this is the primary bottleneck for most people. They desire transformation, but demand certainty. They want to evolve, but refuse to release what is familiar. They want a breakthrough, but they insist it adheres to their current logic. Life does not operate on those terms. The new requires the decommissioning of the old. The upgrade necessitates leaving the legacy version behind. And this feels threatening because the human brain is hardwired to equate change with risk, even when maintaining the status quo is the most hazardous option. Consider any pivotal transition in your past: a career change, a relocation, the end of a significant relationship. At the time, it likely felt disorienting. The future was an unwritten variable, but with the clarity of hindsight, can you now recognize how that very change created the necessary space for something more aligned? How what felt like a destabilizing loss was actually a strategic clearing of the path? That is the recurring pattern. That is the methodology of growth. You do not receive the new variable until you release your hold on the old one. And our consciousness has a fascinating way of presenting us with scenarios that compel a choice. It will rerun the same essential challenge in different contexts until the lesson is integrated, until you finally accept that letting go is not about forfeiture, but about making capacity for what is truly congruent with your potential. And if you are engaging with this content right now, if some part of this analysis is activating a sense of recognition, if a part of you acknowledges a greater capacity than you are currently deploying, that is not a fantasy. That is data. That is your own higher level awareness, confirming what you've long suspected, but perhaps lacked the framework to validate. You were not led here by chance. This awareness, this dissonance you feel about operating below your potential, it is all part of a larger process unfolding. And the critical question is not whether you are capable of it. The question is whether you are willing to trust the process. Because what I have observed is this: life is always functioning in a way that supports your highest growth, even when the data seems contradictory. Every apparent failure is a data point for a better strategy. Every obstacle is a redirection toward a more optimal path. Every moment of confusion is preparing you for a degree of clarity you have never before possessed. The individuals who master this, who learn to collaborate with change instead of resisting it, who trust the process even without a guaranteed outcome, they appear to be playing a different game entirely. Not due to privilege, not due to luck, but because they have trained themselves to perceive the mechanisms that were always there. So, here is your decision point. You can close this program, return to your default settings, and operate as if this insight never occurred. Or you can accept this as the catalyst you have been seeking, the prompt from your own awareness that it's time to step into your role as the architect of your experience. Because every event you've navigated, every mistake, every success, every moment of uncertainty has been training you for this. The moment you fully comprehend that you are not a product of your circumstances, you are the designer of your response to them. The question is not whether you can achieve this transformation. The question is whether you are finally ready to stop consenting to a reality that is less than what you know is possible. And to conclude, a small exercise. If you've reached this point and felt an internal shift, anchor this new state. Write in the comments the phrase, "My perspective is my power." Let this not be merely a comment, but your personal declaration, the starting point from which new possibilities emerge.